I did run my first class on quantum computing at, let's say, at Cisco, and that's a whole big thing. But I am not revealing any proprietary information. That really is publicly available information that I put on the slides. So these are more like guidelines for me. And of course, if you want to download and teach it anywhere, then good. I never put that they are open, but you know, that's knowledge. You're not going to stop people in the sense that, let me download like this one. And I'll be back to that, but I want to show what is the environment. So download here. So that is about the quantum computing. And one thing that you see here at the bottom is copyright. So theoretically, you're not allowed to take the slides and just use them like that. But who stops you from copying, for example? Okay, now that class was my first run, and I think it was very successful, touching the most important points, but I got some bad grades. So before we go into this, because I want to show you that's indicative of something interesting. So before we go into this, let's go back to the run and see what we have there in the run. So I got distracted into this. That is a complete folder. And if I upload anything else, that goes into the same folder. That's sort of supporting materials in the folder. Then these are the labs. They are open because again, I take them from IBM, Qiskit. Qiskit is the library that is the leading library. There are others, but I have not seen anybody using other libraries in their presentation. So I assume that that is the most popular, like this. That's the lab. Now, what else do we have here? So you have the story of what we did. It shows you the IBM tutorial and shows you the YouTube channel. Okay, that's it. That's the introduction. If you want to say anything, please do, but I will continue because I think that the way the very first course ran is very indicative. So some people were very excited and some people were just the opposite. Right away, I can tell you, it's not a popularity show. So those people who were excited, they said, look, we are Cisco. Quantum computing is very important. It is going to make a world of difference in encryption. And that guy was specifically from the encryption and security department. So of course, he was very interested. When I'm saying of course, it just lucked out. What if I didn't have that enthusiastic student? There would be less enthusiasm there. But being that he was there, that made a big difference. Now, he was not the only one. There were a few other people who understood what the importance of quantum computing is, especially for a company like Cisco, and by the way, for all of the companies. Okay. Now, there were some other people who were just as interested, and then there were people who said, no, I would never send anyone to this class. So I'm giving him not a 5, but a 2, and I'm going to have a talk with the management. But that is exactly the point. I misled the students a little bit. This course was called Quantum Computing for Classical Programmers. Well, it turned out that it's a little bit of a misnomer. Let me go to chat and I'll explain why it is a misnomer and see if you agree with this. Well, quantum computing for classical programmers implies its simple meaning that you can take a classical programmer and make him into a quantum computing programmer. And that is not the case at all, because quantum computing is not another language. It's a completely another world. Can you take a classical program and make him a quantum computing? That well depends if he understands. And that requires much more understanding and depth than, let us say, you want to teach somebody Spark, that's just big data, a lot of data, or even regular machine learning. Because in quantum computing, you also need quantum physics. It's a good thing to have quantum physics, even though that's not really required. And next, you need to step back and understand where are you going to use this quantum computing. You find out that today, exactly today, what today, April 21st, 2023, there are no applications that would work better on a quantum computing than classical applications. So I'm teaching you something that doesn't exist. And the science fiction novel about this that I maybe already mentioned, I really need to find it, is where the time traveler comes back to our day and age, meets a guy who is like a vagabond, not doing anything specific, and they get very drunk, and the time traveler teaches our guy time machine repair, which is a very valuable profession, but for this guy, there are no time machines. So in our case, very valuable profession. Let's go, indeed. Indeed. And let's do quantum computing. There you are, it helps us. Quantum computing in the United States, about 1,000 jobs, and that doesn't change all that much. And even attractive salaries in a nice place, as you can see. But there is no downturn, but compare this to Java. What do you have? You have 55,000, that's 2%. So they find out there are no jobs yet, and you have to be an enthusiast. And still, that's very interesting. Okay, Jose, I'll try to help you do either this or that. But what I misled them is in the title. Quantum computing is not really for classical programmers, or at least it doesn't mean what it means. So I'll have to wiggle out in the talk with the management, but I hope to turn it around and explain, boy, this extremely important, right? The quantum computing is going to be a very, very important weapon, but definitely a force in the world. And you need to start now. Just don't pretend that it's just another language. Now, with that, you know everything there is to know about how it went. And we jokingly said that we should have a quantum computing task force in the company. And the guys jokingly said, we are that. We are 10 people here, except that it turned out that 2 people were not that happy. And maybe I'll talk about that too. Now, I want to do this. Let's start with an introduction to the course, and that will be a good start to talk about this. So that is what quantum computing is, and so on. These are the subjects. I find them absolutely fascinating, especially when we talk about, what do we call it? Quantum teleportation. Teleportation, and then immediately everybody has to say, well, that's not really space travel teleportation, where you disappear in one corner of the room and reappear in another corner of the room. It's not quite that, but it's not that far either, because quantum teleportation is the way of sending information faster than the speed of light to any place in the universe. That is really good. Now, just yesterday, I think I saw quantum teleportation long distance, a new discovery. quantum teleportation long distance. I should save that there. No, not there. But they were able to do this quantum teleportation at serious distances. So I think that's awesome, right? It is like science fiction. So that's what we cover. I say, in brief, quantum computing is very simple. You tell the electrons or the ions or the photons what you really want from them, and then you go away, you hide, and they do their work, and then you come back and measure the results, and lo and behold, that's really the results. I think that is a very good explanation, but you honestly don't look. Anytime you look, you break the whole story. Well, that's also sounding very fantastical. But then we go into real stuff, and that is how you program this computer. Now, I think I should, that's not interesting. I should show you the introduction now. I think the easiest way is to just go into those slides and take one at a time and download them. So you go to that folder, and that would be the introduction, and it would probably allow us to download, and you too. And I may have used this already, but now we're going through that in a somewhat different manner and different attitude. So we mentioned this, by the way, there is a children's book that is real. That is the spoiler. That really is what quantum computing is all about. It's the same computer, but the bits can be not 0 or 1, or they can be anything in between, and communicating between themselves. They can cover much more possible combinations, and they are called qubits. That is all we know, and that is the classical explanation. The girl shows that she really hides, honestly doesn't see, and then they do this stuff. And that is the physical meaning. So I don't want to dwell on the physical meaning, why it works, but in the end, it's guys like this that invent algorithms, and these algorithms all show up in this lab. In particular, this is where the Shor algorithm, and that guy is Shor. And every, therefore, program for quantum computer is truly an invention. And it doesn't deserve the Nobel Prizes yet, but at least it's making noise. So that's where the quantum computing is very different from regular computing, where you don't get that much exciting if your program works. And then we continue, and we talk about numbers and why it is so good, and then entanglement. So quantum entanglement is fun to explain. You take two ions, and honestly, I don't know what ions are. It is some little particles, but I know that they build them often on these iron particles. You can think electrons. And so you first make them very friendly. This is called entanglement. You make sure that they are entangled, that they are connected. And then you send them on their way, and they can be, I see your question, and they can be anywhere, and whatever happens to one happens to the other, or maybe with the minus sign. But that is the basis of these algorithms. If you want to take a very large number and find its prime components or dividers, there is an algorithm for that. Now it sounds like, so what's the big deal? But all of our encryption, the whole world, all the military secrets, all the commerce is based on the fact that you cannot factor large numbers. And if there is an algorithm that can, well, all your encryption is broken, RSA is broken, SSH is broken, HTTPS is broken, and that hasn't happened yet, but estimates are between 2 and 5 years it will happen. Now, when that happens, the world doesn't go into non-existence, but instead it begins to use encryption algorithms that are coming from exactly that, are coming from quantum computing itself. And I think there are even companies that sell such devices. Now, in brief, how does it work? Again, thanks to entanglement. We send essentially the information, but we send it in two portions. First, the key. So before I send the valuable information out, I send the key. And if somebody interposes, if somebody watches over that traffic, then he ruins the entanglement. By the way, I forgot to mention that, of course, you send only part of the information. The other part is entangled and in your hands. So you send the entangled parts, and if somebody watches, he ruins the entanglement, and you see that. Again, amazing, beautiful thing, but you can know whether they listen, eavesdrop, or they don't. That's a perfect encryption until it becomes popular and somebody finds a way to break even that. But today, I think people think of it as a perfect encryption, and that's where we will go. But going to this will require a whole world change. And at a certain moment, all encryption will be broken. So that's where we are. That's how important things are. I wanted to show maybe a picture or two, but first let's address your question. Bits are discrete and qubits are continuous values. Yes, you can explain it like this, and it's a good explanation. You can say that bits are either 0 or 1, and you should go back and investigate what this bit is, and you find out it's an electronic circuit, which can be either fully or almost fully charged or not charged. So that electronic circuit is really based on analog computing. But by now we have abstracted from this, and it's either 0 or 1. By contrast, a qubit is either 0 or 1 or anything in between. So you can think of it as a continuous value, and you can remember that that experience proves that it does behave as a wave, also as a wave. But that understanding won't give you real computing power and what to write. So that is what we explain, how you need to start with a qubit in the, let's say, 0 position. In other words, right now, if you measure it is 0, and then you can put it into a new state, and that's called superposition, where it does have any value between 0 and 1 with a certain probability. Now, at this point, I think the regular programmer would be giddy. But if you don't measure, you just don't know what it is. There is no such thing as what is really going on. Also, the philosophical and the physical question. But when finally you measure, you get a value. You get either a 0 or a 1. So what happens in between? As I told you, you don't ask. Now, here is a funny thing. So the more we talk of that, the more funny it will become if you're interested in going through all those teenage talk about sex, or this time quantum computing talk. You can go, that is the link. And not here. Why are they important? There are pictures. Why are they important? So there is a video, and that is the video that I'm not sure we have seen. So now in the class, I actually show the video. I say, let's stop. It's 15 minutes video. Let's watch. But to you guys, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I will just give you the link. It's a nice video by some leading stars. They have nothing to do with quantum computing, but they are technical bloggers or technical news people. So really important. And let me see if we have it here. And if not, we absolutely must. No, we don't. So it will probably be in the slides. I'm thinking how I can find it. Okay, I promise. I'll promise this. I will put it on our quantum computing run here. And I will say best show about QC. And then here I will give you that show, promise. So that is what will happen. And now let's go here. And I will ask you. So that would be an introduction to quantum computing. And then it turns out that you talk to the quantum computer through Python. Yes. And you know how it looks, quantum computer. Picture. That's what it looks like. It's a lot of golden color. Very nice. And there's a picture of the president, Mr. Biden, with that kind of computer. But all that is not really quantum computer. It's the connections. It's how those electrons or ions, how they talk to each other and to the outside world. That is this picture. The ions, some very small thingies that also run at ultra cold temperatures, just a little bit colder than outer space. And my nephew actually works in Israel in a company that's manufacturing those ions. Very interesting thing. Let's go back. That's where we are. So then we go into, you talk to them in Python, and they reply in Python, and what's inside remains hidden. Then there is applications. What applications are there right now? Well, it turns out that there are no applications. That's an interesting fact that you should have told us earlier. Maybe we wouldn't come to the class. And then what's missing? And then the philosophical corner. So maybe we will do the philosophical corner. Of course, you're free to chat and ask what you want, but today I feel more like download the philosophy corner. Okay, so here is the philosophy corner because we want to know how it really works. And the interesting thing is that it's forbidden to ask. You don't know how it really works. This is called the local realism. What is what here? So realism means that we don't know how those particles behave, but somehow they behave. That's not true. So realism is the posits the existence of physical world with its truth and its lie. Well, it turns out that in quantum computing and in quantum physics in general, no, that's not true. Reality doesn't exist until the time you measure, until the time you look at it. That was philosophically very hard to accept, and most history here talks more about how people found such things hard to accept than how hard it was really to compute. Okay, so then Einstein and a couple more physicists wrote a paper of how that couldn't even be, but in the end it was, and the Nobel Laureate Prize 2022 went to the people who proved that this is wrong, that there is no realism, or maybe there is no speed of light. Either or was very strange. So that's what locality is, and that's what realism is. And in the end, it is the end of it. The Nobel Prize just stated the fact that here are the people who worked on that and proved that that is not true. So what is true? There are many theories. There are 4 approaches. And there is this book about this. And that book is available to listen to on Audible, and it is free over there. It is also available as a PDF. So nice book. It has a chapter in the end. What does the world really do? That's the guy who wrote it. And here are the approaches. One of them is cubism, a hint to cubism, which says, well, nothing exists until you calculate. So just shut up and calculate, the official name of that theory. The other theory is called superdeterminism. What it says is that all these ions, all these electrons started at a certain point, and that certain point was Big Bang, right? That's when everything started, physicists tell us, and that happened, I think, 15 billion years ago. 15 or 50, confused in my mind, but practically a long time ago. So back then, all the particles in the universe agreed, they had a pact on what they are going to do in the future. For all those 15 billion years, they had a policy. How did they store that? I don't understand, but the theory says yes. And that explains all this superposition and especially entanglement. So they knew in advance, 15 billion years ago in advance, that there will be an experiment, and that the experiment will put them into entangled position, and they agreed to behave a certain way. That's why it looks like this. Now, nobody says that I'm crazy. I'm checking on the chat. No, nobody says, Mark, you're crazy, because I didn't invent it. People believe this. There is no free will. Now, if it feels like, if you think that you have free will, well, that is what, because you were programmed to think there is free will. One of the Hindu students in my class said, yeah, that is our philosophy. Don't be surprised. Okay, so then there is a philosophy, and the philosophical meaning of that is expressed in one of the 6 famous paradoxes. And this paradox says, everything is predestined, but the free will is granted. That's how it is expressed. So everything is predestined is exactly superdeterminism, but the free will is granted converts that into paradox. So there are many answers to this. And the first answer is that it only seems to you that you have free will. All right, that is approach number 2. Now, by now you will probably say, maybe I'll shut up and calculate, because it's becoming very hairy, but nevertheless, that is the official theory. The second one is multiverse, which says that every time that electron has a choice, go to the right or go to the left, a new universe is created. And there are enough people who subscribe to this theory, multiverse, and there are many, many universes. In fact, you can say infinite number, because practically it's just too much. Now, there is also another theory that is our reality here is a higher dimensional space. I like the graphical description of that. It's like this. Imagine how people live in 2-dimensional space on the screen. They live in this 2-dimensional space, And they observe interesting events. They once in a while see holes in this made by who knows what power, but they see holes appearing at the same time at specific distances. Holes, like empty. So they don't know what it is, but in truth, there is a three-dimensional, very big man, Titan, they call him. He has a three-dimensional fork. So with his three-dimensional fork, he pokes a hole in our two-dimensional world, and that explains how that really happens. I think it's just as science fiction as everything else. But that is for those people who think there is an explanation to everything. So this Brody, this guy, this project. He explains it like those two-dimensional scientists, they scratch their two-dimensional heads, not being able to figure it out how can that be, because they don't have any idea of those multi-dimensional titans. Again, that goes into Kabbalah and into spiritual explanations that yes, indeed, our world is five-dimensional, and the first three dimensions are what we know: up, down, right, left. But the other two are also time, and time, even Einstein would agree that there is a time dimension. But the fourth dimension is soul, or good, bad, and altogether there is a book, Sefer Yetzirah, describing that space. Okay, so that's another theory, which just says you don't know enough, guys. If you knew enough, it wouldn't be surprising. And finally, that's the fact. Measurement creates objectively real states. In other words, still, don't ask what is real. On the quantum physics level, nothing is real. Everything has certain probability, but nothing has a real state. I think that's all charming. And practically what you do is go to our lab right here, right? And go to the very first lab here and do the setup. And that describes how you do the setup. Then you go into quantum states, and that describes how you go into quantum states. So let me show you the very first lab. Again, it doesn't matter how it works. Anyway, to look inside this computer, you have to warm it up a little bit. It's just too cold, and you have to stop it before. So it really behaves according to its own rules. Nobody should look inside. But you do this by actually building diagrams. Now that's deeper than what I want to do today. All I wanted to do is tell you how it went and what the conclusions are, but the code is right here. You actually say QC output equals quantum circuit with 8 qubits, and then you measure them and they come out all as 0. And that is shown here. That is all 8 zeros. So there is a reality to this. I also mentioned that the real computing time costs $60 per second, and that is what personally made me a believer that it exists, because I think money does exist and people do pay them. And also, if you submit any of the job into quantum computing on the quantum computer at IBM, then you can specify whether it runs on a real computer or on a quantum, or I mean, either quantum or a simulator. And it's very hard to really run on quantum computer because they're careful to protect your money. So even though I submit my job and it takes an hour and sometimes a whole day before it runs because it goes into a queue, again, that shows me that these people who run it, that's real. That gives you a feel for what it really is. Now, at this point, I like to stop my share. Repeat my promise that I'll give you a very fun video and any questions. Now, Jose, you said, yeah, that's good money. Yes, good money, but you have to be an enthusiast of that because it's not enough, because there are alternatives. And what are the alternatives? That, of course, is AI. So stay on, log in into the next webinar and we'll talk about AI. But that, I think, is much more promising in way of money. I promise not to share screen, but here it is. And if we go to Indeed, and maybe search for AI. What do we see there? I hope it understands. Artificial intelligence. No, it doesn't. Well, how about artificial intelligence? How many? I have this thing in the way. Oh, like that. Okay, 27,000 jobs and salaries. It's not really artificial intelligence or what? Salaries should be much, much higher. So, okay, let's put ChatGPT. How about that? I'm amazed. Just one less thing. Prompt engineer, but much more, okay? And many more jobs. What's the number of jobs? 154. So whatever I say turns out to be wrong, but it is true that it's much more in demand. You just call yourself somebody who knows, and that's it. They should, that will at least get you an interview. One guy actually called himself that and got an interview, but he was getting the answers from same ChatGPT. Could see that. Okay. Okay, now this is the time to ask questions or come up with the new demands, what you want to see in the next webinar. For my part, I have an idea what I want to do. So far, it turned out like this. I started with just one webinar to just talk about quantum computing. Wouldn't that be fun? But it turned out to be a continuous series. So usually I tell you about what's the latest news, or what changed in the world in 1 week, and some of the codes, some of the labs. For example, I haven't spoken about that IBM changed their material on the website right on the day when we were having our course. So some of the labs didn't perfectly work. My suggestions, I copied the labs into my own repository, and nevertheless, some libraries got updated. So I think that is a safe way. I'll make sure that all of the labs work. No libraries create a problem anymore because things change all the time. Versions change. Whatever you install becomes different. And even what worked yesterday may not work today. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll update the labs. So I'll continue. I'll continue showing you what is new here. And meanwhile, you can email, or you can, no, you cannot put anything on this, but that's where you can read. So next time that we send an announcement should be next Friday for 11 a.m. Central Time, and we'll just continue. the. Should be the best show. Okay, the best show. So thank you very much, everybody. And we'll talk again next. Okay, if we set up CNOT from Q1 to Q2, then CNOT from Q1, what does it do? That's a good question, Jim. Gates are sequential. So good question. Let me explain to the other people what the question means, first of all. Gates are transformations. So when you have just bit, you can either make it a 1 out of 0 or 0 to 1, and that's pretty much all you can do. But with qubits, you can change the probabilities around. You can shift them, and that is actually how Shor's algorithm works, by squeezing the space. So that is accomplished with gates. Gates in mathematical notation are matrices. So the question is, here, what do you do with them? Well, first of all, transformations, you apply them sequentially. You don't apply them at the same time on one qubit. You can apply gates to a qubit and then another gate and then another gate. That's what you do. And that is what our labs explore. They sequential, yes, to work on one qubit. But then you apply another gate on another qubit. That can work in parallel. I hope that answers your question. I hope that was the question. And then you say we set up CNOT from Q1 to Q2. That's a controlled NOT, which is equivalent to, I believe, XOR. Then CNOT from Q1 to Q2, what does that? So we would, that's a good question, but we would have to look at exactly how the diagram looks and how do we apply them. But the basic rule is that whatever your code says, that is what the diagram becomes. And then it is applied sequentially to each individual qubit, but between qubits, there's entanglement and they can communicate. Thank you, Jin. All right, so saying goodbye for now and until next week. John, you're welcome. Aisha, you're welcome. I'll be your welcome.